The way I started to do presentations was that as an undergraduate, I studied art history at a very small liberal arts college. And it was just kind of starting to be the time where the curriculum was changing to like group presentations and seminars where you actually had to present content on your own. So since I was an art history person, I often had to do almost kind of like performance art for my presentations. And I loved contemporary art. So I started to do, and I was good at doing kind of performance art. So I started to do that and I started to get really good grades, so I just kept that up. And after I left college, I was always very close with a lot of people who are artists and art history professors in Washington, D.C. And they began to ask me to do guest lecturing in women in the arts because I did my thesis on, well, I don't want to get into what I did my thesis on, but what I did my thesis on was kind of a feminist interpretation of contemporary art. So, needless to say, it's a lot longer than that, and we'll talk about it later if you really care about it. So I started to kind of represent women in the arts for my friends who were professors. So I started to do these kinds of presentations for studio art classes and for art history classes. So that's kind of where I come from. And then later on, and so I started to do on-site lecturing in museums, which you have to be pretty bold because there's often people who weren't even in the class would just start coming along with you, and you just did your best, and they were listening to you and sometimes arguing with you, and so by the time I came into Library Land, I was pretty much good to go in terms of presenting and pretty comfortable with it. So really all I did was shift my content. So that's where I come from. I come from an art background.
And I started working actually as a waitress. I was a waitress and a bartender through college, and I think that actually gave me some skills that I then transferred to being a high school teacher and a high school librarian. In many ways, I have many skills that came from waitressing.
I was a waitress as well.
Yeah, and that including crowd control, which works, and that helped me a lot in a high school English classroom. And then so presenting was part of my every single day job when I became first an English teacher and then a high school librarian. And one thing that I think is interesting now being in an academic library is, even though I may not have it be my everyday job, presenting, as I'm sure you all are starting to see just through your classes, is a big part of being a librarian. Like we talk to each other at conferences, in small groups and large groups, within the organization, outside of the organization, and so it's a skill that you need to have and think about, and there's sort of I think that the idea of the librarian sort of back behind the desk is so far gone from us now.
Sadly.
And I'm with it. I mean, it's okay with me. But that it speaks so that we're doing this all the time. So even not as a teacher anymore, I'm still teaching and presenting and doing all of that.
So the big thing that Leslie and I wanted to kind of talk to you guys about today is, lots of people will tell you, like, there's a laundry list of things to do, like, don't say and stand a certain way. And I pretty much break all those rules. And I don't care if I don't care if I have correct grammar when I do presentations. I don't care if I, sometimes lose my train of thought. I've actually totally changed gears at national conferences and asked people questions in the audience and gone a completely different way. So I'm totally fine with doing all that. But what we really wanted to talk about today was, so I have like 15 years of experience, and you probably, and in 10 years of experience being a waitress. And how long do you have?
I started 97, so 10 years teaching, and then about 5 years waitressing.
So you all should go out and become waiters and waitresses. It's totally true. That's where you find. That's how you learn classroom management.
That's why I'm in library school.
Exactly. It's great. So what we really wanted to talk about today was that you guys can go out and read books on public speaking all you want. But what we really want to talk to you guys about is that everyone has a certain thing that they are totally petrified about, that they are going to get exposed for when they're doing presentations. And now I'm going to be on YouTube telling all of you that what I'm doing, that what we are individually scared of. Excellent. Okay. So, here I go. So, my issue, or my issue is that ever since I was a little kid, as you all can imagine, I'm a very extroverted person. I've always been very popular. I've always hung out with large amounts of people, and people like me, and I'm likable and everything like that. But what I've always had the fear of is that I didn't have content to back up all this enthusiasm and charisma. So I always thought I was an empty-headed cheerleader, and that's why I call myself the empty-headed cheerleader. And that has sometimes happened and come to fruition that I was an empty-headed cheerleader, honestly, and I didn't understand as much as I thought I might understand. So my big strategy, and this is what we're going to talk to you guys about today, everyone has to have a strategy that overcomes their biggest fear. So my strategy is, and Rebecca can talk about this, is that by the time I present, I know my content inside and out. And anyone can ask me any question about that subject. And I also taught literature reviews, and that's another part of this, is actually literally understanding all the literature in your field. That by the time I go up to the podium, I don't look at notes, I don't look at my PowerPoint, I can switch in mid-year, because I have to understand my content. And you've probably seen me switch in mid-year. It really changed my focus according to what's happening in the audience. And so so what we really want to talk to you guys about today is what is your biggest fear and what is the strategy you're going to create to overcome that fear. So that's my fear.
And for me, my biggest thing is still something very present with me every time I talk to groups of people is I am really introverted. So I always get really nervous, really shy. And I was telling Mary this was kind of a funny presentation to have to sit and analyze how very anxious I get when I present. So, but what I try really hard to do is just act like I'm having a conversation. If I can look at the people that I'm talking to, and I've talked to big groups too, that like big national conferences, but even this kind of a group, anywhere in between, talk to the people beforehand, get to know them, create a space that's comfortable for yourself so that you feel like there's a connection. That's a good way for me to kind of overcome that. So I feel more like I'm talking to individual people than kind of a faceless crowd, which makes my stomach. So that's, besides the preparing, that's another huge thing that I can talk about a little bit is preparing if you really need to and want to, because then if somebody asks you a question, if your slides don't work, if something happens, you're still okay. You can still continue to have that conversation, rally the troops, whatever it is that whatever approach you are going to take, knowing what you're talking about, you can always keep that in the back of your mind. Okay, no matter what happens, I'll be okay because I know what it is that I'm about to talk about, know what I need to say. When I was practicing to be a teacher, I thought I could memorize everything, that would help me somehow overcome being anxious in front of people. And so I would try, I'd write down word for word everything I would say before I go to teach practice classes, and it was such a disaster. It was such, because I'd forget one single word, and then the whole rest of the lesson would just fall apart. So that, so I tried all these different ways of coping, and the best thing is to just know it so that you can say it to yourself in many different ways. Memorizing, for me at least, turned out to just not work. And I think people can tell when you're kind of up there being the robot rather than trying to interact with.
Well, the other thing about memorizing is that you're memorizing a linear way, and if someone throws you off your game, then you can't get back there. And that's one of my things I did at the very beginning. I remember when I was doing art stuff in museums, and like we said, it was very disarming because there were people that weren't even in the class would show up and start listening, and I would like lose my focus. But the only good thing about in art is that you actually have a painting in front of you, so you can kind of be like, oh yeah, I'm on this page. And but I remember, a few times experiencing exactly what Leslie's talking about, like getting lost in and and not being able to get my footing again because I was doing it from a linear process. And you can't jump back in. So when we talk about this, so that's one of the strategies that Leslie and I share, is literally knowing your topic. And this is about integration. And when we talk about this all the time when we teach as well, you cannot underestimate how much time you need to integrate information. You know, lots of times in the world that we're living in now, we're searching. But integration happens when you're actually not looking at the stuff, when you're not reading it, when you're walking to the bus, when you're waiting for the bus, when you're driving, when you're cleaning, when you're in the shower. And this is when integration and assimilation happens. And that's, to me, when I start to be like, okay, now I understand all aspects of this. So if somebody comes at me from this, angle, I'll be okay. So we have a bunch of questions for you guys, okay? So we can do this, you guys can just yell out. So we always think that the best way to get to kind of like our best practices or what we want to do or what we want to think about is to think about, when you guys think about presentations, see, I'm going to get comfortable, sorry YouTube, when you guys think about the kinds of presentations you've liked best, what have they been and why have you liked them?
Interactive.
What's an example of one you've liked?
Like what you guys are doing right now. I can't think of one off the top of my head. No, but seriously, I like it. I like how you guys aren't just up there talking that type of thing. I mean, really, that's the perfect example. It's hard to do that with a huge faceless crowd.
I think that's like what Leslie was talking about, how you, and I do that too, I never thought about that before, is that I always, before, especially when you're going up under these big podiums and you're just going to have to be there's some kind of human connection to those people. But what have you guys thought about, like when you saw somebody either on television or in a lecture hall?
There was, when I went to college, there was a wonderful professor who, his specialty was modern architecture. And he was so passionate about it. He's now 88 and he's still teaching. I had a friend just told me recently we just saw him lecture. But this guy would get up and his classes were always just packed.
Yeah.
He'd have 400 or 500 people in the class just because of the fame of what, of his ability to engage. Well, he would, and this will date myself a little bit, because
Don't worry, I date myself all the time.
They have slides up there and had a big long pointer. And he'd be up on a stage. And the story was that there was a time when he was up there and he kept going talking about his story. He was talking about his story, his company fell off the stage. He did not skip a beat. He kept talking and climbed right out of up. His sentence was, and then he just went on to the end.
That's awesome.
So there's, something about that passion for what's being discussed that's just so compelling.
Yeah, and it's interesting to me, I always call that the School of Rock world of instruction.
Oh, yeah.
Because you watch Jack Black in School of Rock, and I love music, so I love the content that he was talking about as well. But you really, no matter what the content is, you can totally tell if somebody's into it or not. And if they're not into it, they don't care about it, no strategy is going to help them.
And I think that that's when you get somebody who speaks and somebody who reads to you.
Yes.
And when they read to you, it's like, I don't care what you're saying, you lose them.
Yeah.
You totally lose them. And we had a speaker come and talk to us, and he was like what Abby's talking about, what was Vine Orga that came to talk to us. And it was like, everything he wrote came out of him. And so this is the way it is. Well, his son is going along the same path, but he reads his speeches.
Yeah.
And even though they're from the same, family, household, blah, 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 just two different speakers.
So that brings us to our next question. So what do you, what kinds of questions, when you see presentations and you don't like them, what do they like? So reading, that really, when you go to library conferences and you walk into this big thing and the people are at the podium and they put their head down, I'm like, excuse me, I'm spending a lot of money to be here.
Or they turn around and read their PowerPoint.
Oh, we'll get to that a little later. I'm like that Nirvana song, you know, I am here to be entertained. I want to be entertained. And I believe that just because we are, you know, we're talking about education and we're talking about intellectual things, it does not mean that you cannot be entertaining as well. And I hate, like you said, they can be telling me the cure for cancer, and if they put their head down, I'm like, whatever. So what's our next question?
So the next question is, what do you all think is the scariest thing? Do you have an individual scariest thing? We'll do some group.
Yeah, we'll go around. Yeah, we'll go around. Let's go around the table. What's the scariest thing? Because we're going to address it. We're not just going to leave it hanging.
Oh, what's the scariest thing about presenting?
Mm-hmm.
Well, I think for me, it's like, I don't think I'm very interesting. So I'm like, you know, if I'm not prepared, I'm like, oh my God, I've lost them. They're done. Yeah, I'm not going to be interesting then. And I think I have such fear about presenting that I put off preparing.
Right.
And so I just make sure I fail.
Right.
So when I do spend the time to really prepare, I do well. But it takes a lot.
So that's what we talked about, is that really, you really have to, from my point of view, and Leslie can say what she thinks as well, I think, I go by the 48-hour rule. Most of your large thoughts about whatever you're presenting about should be done 48 hours before you present. Now, that's not to say you can't make your PowerPoint the night before. I'm not saying that. And we're going to talk about PowerPoint and how to do it well and how to do it badly. But you should give yourself 2 full days to be cleaning, to be walking around your neighborhood, to be taking care of your kid, to be, you know, wandering around your house, you know, driving. This is the only way you're going to integrate. It's the only way you're going to, I think it's the only way to feel comfortable.
Mm-hmm.
So give yourself 48 hours.
And one trick I have that I do is I will kind of write down or outline type of whatever my kind of big points, like what things need to happen, what are my objectives or what are the goals for the presentation of the class. And just get those there so that they're down. And then I'll pencil in things as I go, kind of, you know, as they come to me, oh, this, you know, this might be better here, but just to kind of have something to look at. So I'll type it and then I can kind of walk away from it because it's there, it's captured. I don't need to always have it right at the front of my head. It can kind of rest and I can look at it. And that's how I do it at work all the time. Kind of get it ready, outline it, set it aside, do other things, take a look, write ideas down.
I do that too. I always write down all my thoughts and then walk away.
I filled it with Post-it notes.
Oh,
Because, and then on a piece of paper that has no lines, and so I'll like, you know, stick them all on there. A lot of times they'll be different colors, you know, like by a part of the topic or something like that. And then as time goes on, probably, I don't think I would ever be done 48 hours in advance, but, you know, I'm in the process of kind of moving them around and deciding what order makes sense. And you can always add something then too, but it may just be, you know, 2 or 3 words on a Post-it note, and then that makes it easier too when I'm talking, because I don't have to sit there and try to look at, you know, a whole outline or a sentence or whatever else. I just got a note, you know, this is a topic that I'm going to talk on, and probably have that comfort with the content behind that. I mean,
Exactly.
because to come up with that topic on the Post-it note, there's a lot of thinking that's gone into that, you know. And then if you decide, you know, you don't have enough time, or, you know, then you just forget one of the Post-it notes or float off, you know, the morning before you go, forget it, you know. And listen to what other people
I love that.
conference, and you go, no, you know, that's not going to fit in, and you know.
So, okay, Aaron, what's your biggest fear
Um,
when you present?
No, can I just having to present at all?
Just like actually physically, sometimes it's just physically getting there.
No, seriously, physically, like when I'm up there, it's not so bad. It's really weird, as long as I'm prepared, you know.
Yeah.
I've been presenting a lot lately with my GA that I'm doing right now, the program I'm in, we're in a high school. I have to go with other high school students and present to these classrooms of 30. I think 30 is like the worst, because too big to where you can't really, it's not intimate like this, but it's also not big enough to where it's just like the spotlights and you don't see anybody. You see everybody and they see you, and it's like they're right there, it's the worst. But just get them started.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, and I always find like the hour or two before I have to go and present,
oh man.
I better be occupied, or I'm
No
very-
Mexican food.
No. Actually, no food at all. I've gone at conferences where literally people have just like handed me like Gatorade coffee, and I've had literally like sometimes not eaten for like 18 hours.
The anxiety's too much.
I got the anxiety diet going on. How about you, Rebecca?
Well, it's probably more just the content part of it, but getting stumped on a question or getting just freezing, losing your train of thought completely, which I did at the interview that I had recently, where I just froze, and it was a question that I had prepared for, and I had it written down, but I had like 8 pages of notes in front of me, and I was like, somewhere in here, and I just, you know, when you get to that point where you're so nervous that you just freeze up, or you can't.
And you can always, in a presentation, what's nice, is in library world, people actually really genuinely want to like you, and you
Yes.
generally want to really like them. And I've been in situations where I've been asked a question, couldn't answer it at all, and said, you know what, I will get back to you on this. And that is usually fun, or, you know, I need to look into this, or, oh my gosh, I've never thought of that. And people, in general, I mean, there's always going to be somebody who's excited to have, you know, stump the presenter or whatever, but, you know, job interviews, that is kind of that's sort of a bummer, but, teasing,
But I also think it's like it's more educated to say, you know, I don't have all the information. I might need to make a good decision here, or to actually tell you, you know, give you a full answer. And I think that that's educated as well.
And if you handled the interview question with, you know I goofed up interview questions here too. You interview all day long. How can you not do something silly? You know, and then you play it over and over. But let me just really get into your anxiety here. You do the best you can, and then people see how you handle it.
Yeah.
Under pressure imperfectly, because we all, you know, anyone who pretends to be perfect at any of this is
A liar.
or a good actor.
Or I constantly say, I don't have enough information to answer that question.
Yeah.
I often do not have enough information to answer questions. How about you, Abby?
It's Allie. But
Allie, I'm
that's
sorry.
okay. No, that's okay. I don't know. I mean, I think I have. You know, I'm the queen of denial, so you know, I kind of push myself right up to the end, and then I can go into heavy duty concentration. That's kind of the way I write papers. But it's like you're saying, I just absorb, and then finally, you know, and stress out about the fact, oh my God, I gotta get this finished. And then finally, boom, I go into deep concentration and come out the other end, and it just flowed out. So I think I do the same thing in terms of presentation. I think probably the hardest thing for me is because oftentimes I'll be presenting on something I really care about. And so if I get somebody that's pushing a hot button in mine, you know, things come flying out. And, you know, that's a little bit of a challenge. You know, I mean, sometimes I think, you know, it's supposed to happen. But, you know, other times I think, oh, I really wish I had said that. Because there would be a better way to have said it.
So like moderating your responses.
Yeah, especially when the, like I said, when they're on a hot, you know, when they've hit one of those spots.
Well, I would say in libraries, I don't think that passion would ever be high enough. I mean, if we were all intensely passionate about our work, we would have a lot less issues in our profession. Put that on YouTube.
I don't know what that means. I'm trying to translate what that means.
I mean that.
There's Alan Greenspan.
Oh my God, I love that. What I mean is that we don't make a lot of money, doing what we do, and we have certain ethics and morals that are supposed to guide what we do and why we became librarians. And a lot of these presentations are because people have to get tenure and stuff like that, and or they write papers because they have to get tenure, and or they're forced by their organization to do that, and that really doesn't have much to do with the profession at all.
Yeah. And that's why when one of those people said something to me that I'm really passionate about, I thought it was good.
Yeah, and I think, I mean, there are definitely things, there are things to be passionate about, and there are and there are definitely issues that I think that I mean, I remember when I was at ACRL last time, and Rebecca was in the audience for this one, and I was doing like value-based marketing, and I was reading from the ALA Code of Ethics and talking about how our job as librarians was to create an informed democracy so that people could make good decisions, and that we could change the world through that. That's written in the ALA Code. You can look at it, and some of the audience laughed. And I said, I don't understand why you're laughing. I don't think this is funny at all. And I think if you don't believe it, you should stop being a librarian. Didn't I? And I just went right on to some other silly thing that I was going to say next, because I don't care. Yeah. But I don't care. I'm not here. I mean,
I still care when those things come flying out of me. I still like I struggle with it afterwards. It's like,
Oh, I didn't struggle with that at all.
How can I respond? I know, but I always try to. I mean, there's a part of me that just. But then the other part of me is, how could I have? I don't want to say couched it, but how could I have delivered it in a way that I make the same point?
Right.
But that they take it home and swallow it and digest it. Instead
Right.
of that, I throw it out at them and it bounces off of them because it just doesn't even get in there.
I think that's, I really think
And
that's
the gut
valid.
reaction is to throw it out at them when you're on a hot, passionate button and you're saying something really ignorant.
Well, first off, there's a lot of ignorant people out there. There's probably like 95% of the population's ignorant. And so really don't expect that much. But the 5% you should definitely fight for. And they're worth it. And, but the other thing is that I think that's the preparation thing. I really feel like it's the preparation thing, because I feel like when you really know what you're doing and why you're doing it, so maybe there's another component of you know what you're doing, and you also know why you're doing it. Why are you there? When you know why you're there, I know you know why you're there, but when you have integrated why you're there, then you can deliver why you're there and why you think what you're saying is important in a way I think that can be communicated. Does that make sense? So I think it's about integration. I mean, I know that I'm going to be a broken record, but I really think that, I mean, Leslie and I teach constantly, and I feel that that's the thing that's dropping out, the integration.
Maybe it's also the goal of what it is that you want them to take away from it. And especially in those cases where it's something that, that you're really passionate about. So you know you want to deliver content, but it's like to figure out, okay, what is it that you want them to take away from that content that you deliver?
Right.
Because you can deliver it in a way that is offensive, or you can deliver it in a way that, you're giving them something to take home and begin to make their own.
Right.
But also understand, Ellen, it's like you're not going to get 100%.
No.
Why not?
You never, ever.
I'm a perfectionist.
My father always said that if everybody liked you, you didn't have a very strong personality.
And Jen, I think that's a perfect, you never will. You
Never.
never will 100%. So you think about what it is, right, what you want to achieve and what you want your audience to, what you want them to learn to know. Whatever.
So it's good. Exactly. So what's your big spirit? Michelle.
I don't know. I think kind of what Renee was saying is like I feel like I do a lot of reading, and then I feel like what I've absorbed I don't put into my presentation enough. So I feel like I don't have enough like depth, and I don't know, I think that's it. I just feel like it's not like sufficient. Like, I always feel like I could put more in, and then I have a problem where I'm like, there's too much information.
Yes.
And it's almost like, but I don't know. It's like my content, I'm not sure how to manage it, how, you know, what's important, what's going to interest people versus what's not. So I think that's what is hard for me. And then sometimes I procrastinate on that, and I don't prepare. Like, that's the thing. I've only prepared for a presentation once. I actually, like, practiced. All the other times, I just, like, it's like word vomit. It just comes out, and I pray that it's good, and I don't know what I say. Like, I'm so anxious, I don't even know what I say. And then at the end of the presentation, I'm like, how did I do? Because I have no clue. I'm just so right. And then I sit down, and I'm like, okay, I'm done, right? Like, so it's, okay, I'm done. So I don't know. So that's kind of strange, is like, my mind just
Yeah, well, I think you're talking about a lot of really important things. Is A, when you begin to read, you always think, I should read more, I should read more, I should read more. I always do that. I always want to read more about my topic. One thing you have to learn as you do research and you do kind of presentations is you will always be putting an artificial boundary around your content.
Yeah.
And it's your artificial boundary. It's nobody else's, it's your artificial boundary. And you've got to, you know, keep it contained. Then, once you decide on that artificial boundary, then that's where you have to, like Leslie was saying, like make that list of things. And that list really helps you say, oh, that would be great if I had another hour, but I don't. Or that would be great if, you know, you have this like, you know, mixture of things, and then as you move through it, you keep saying, that's not that important now. You know, you keep working through it.
Yeah, I start taking stuff out, but it's painful for me. I don't want to do it.
And I think that's
I don't want to get rid of that slide.
Just because you put so much energy into it, but it's for the people you're presenting to. Even though you love it and you feel committed to it, it really is trying to. And that's why, you know, presentations versus teaching a whole semester class. You know, you imagine the three, you can't, in a presentation is a contained, you know, hour and a half, maybe 10 minutes as part of the panel. So you have to really think about what it is that you want them to take away that maybe won't be very interested enough to go learn something more on their own or follow up with you. But I think that desire to over-inform, over-educate is very present in many of us. You know I have to fight that too. You know, but then trying to remind myself, if I can get 3 great points across in an hour, maybe 4 or 5, that is really, I'd say 5 would be really pushing it for me. You want your group to be engaged, you want them to think about what you're saying. If you give them too much, it all just becomes a wash. Anyway, you know, they check out.
I actually think that's comforting. I think it's comforting to know out of all the stuff you read, you're only going to focus on 3 to 5 things. Because then you know, like Leslie said, you know the difference between doing a presentation and writing a research paper, or doing a presentation and teaching a full semester of a class, or something like that. So I think if you stick with the 3 to 5 rule, I think that's really good.
But, and with that too, handouts, URLs to recommended things, fantastic
I've done
resource.
that's what it's still.
Yeah. And people are happy with that. Because you know, and the thing is think about, I'm on a roll here now. Think about when you go to presentations, how much do you really remember? How much of a whole hour? So think of it from the other end too, because we all go to them. How much sticks in your head? You know, you want like kind of those big things and then something to walk away with. Then you can kind of research it at your own pace when it fits for you. You know, pick up the things that you're interested in and let the other just sort of filter out, because as Mary says, you know, we're always, you know, we get so much information dumped into our brains every day, so we don't want to
Over-inform them.
So that's kind of.
What's your name?
Yeah,
Mia?
yeah.
And what's your big spirit about presenting?
I'm not afraid until I get up there.
You're what?
I'm not afraid until I get up there.
And that's.
Oh, really? Say what?
Not afraid at all. I'm fine. I've memorized everything. And then I get up there and I freeze and I can't say anything and I shake like it's an 8
like, what happens when you have, and what have you done to kind of alleviate that when you have to present?
Nothing. I haven't had any success so far. I botch every presentation I've ever done. I think the last thing I did that could be considered a presentation that I didn't mess up. I made it through. And I was proud that I made it through. That was it.
Do you like to talk, when you are hanging out, like socially with people, do you like to talk to people one-on-one? Do you like to talk to people 2 or 3 people? Like, what's your critical mass when you start to like not want to hold court? About 6?
6 or 6.
It's actually pretty big.
Yeah, that's pretty big.
So if you can do that, and you can actually feel very comfortable, like Leslie was saying before, with those 6 people, could you act as if you are in a room with those 6 people when you're doing presentations?
I'm not sure if it matters. 'Cause the last one that I really messed up, there were only 3 people watching.
Well, sometimes that's worse.
Three judges, but that was the one I watched the worst, actually.
I think that for me, I mean, some of the things that I confronted, I'm not a very formal person. Even when I was a waitress, I was always knocked down to cafe waitress. I'm just not a very formal person. It makes no sense why I'm in academia. But anyway, so I've never been real good at pretense. Like I've never been real good at like standing at the podium and assuming the place. And that made me really anxious. What made me feel more comfortable, like what makes me feel more comfortable is that I can come in here and sit on this table and talk to you guys and not stand up there. And that I can, and Leslie and I talked about this all the time, that I can make this interactive and not just talk at you for 30 minutes. So there are certain things that I had to think through and say, these are the things that make me more comfortable. So you have to think about the kind of, like, are you an introvert or an extrovert on a regular basis, like on an everyday level?
Definitely introvert.
So I think actually mine came from when I'm an extrovert. Like, I don't like being on the podium. So it may be that what you should play around with and you should do with your friends and your colleagues here is you should try different like setups in different rooms and like what makes you feel better. Like it might make you feel better to sit behind a desk. Or it might make you feel better to sit behind a podium, you know what I mean? Or it might make you feel better to think about that you're just talking to one person. And you can focus on the same person the entire time. I have been at so many presentations where the person stared at me the entire time. Because you were smiling, huh? Because I was looking back at them. Yeah. So that might be, do you think you could try that? Like acting like you're literally talking like you and I are talking?
Maybe.
Well, it's all a cumulative process, and we have our emails on here, so you can come back and tell us how it goes.
Yeah, what about like dry runs where you're, because what I hear from you is that a number of times you've gotten up there and just frozen and not anything out of it. So it's like dry runs, so it's not in a class, it's not for a grade, it's not for a presentation, but we're, like, it's like that, like we come here and, you present us on something. And if you get partway through and you go, then you tell us, and you walk out of the room and you get happy to start again and come back in, It's just kind of like instead, because what I'm hearing is that, you haven't ever been able to work through it.
That's right,
Sure
that's
you
great.
can.
Well, then
But you need a sympathetic audience to get you.
And also, sometimes you just have to say, like, I got through 10 minutes, and next time I'll get through 15 minutes.
Yeah.
But what I'm hearing, she's harder on herself than probably anybody else.
Yeah, and so if you had people, like, if we all came and saw you informally, we'd be like, oh my God, that was awesome. And then you start to see yourself, differently than how you're seeing yourself in your own head, I mean, a lot of times you don't realize how good or how prepared you are or how elegant you are.
When you said, last time it was like only 3 people, but then you said there's 3 judges. Well, I mean, that's like for your dissertation or something. something, that's like horrible. You know?
So let's practice and let's, as you guys as a student organization, let's have some run-throughs where we do some things and really informally and I'd be happy to show up and see how you guys do it.
And the other thing for me, I think the whole sort of frozen fear thing I can relate to really well, but that you don't have to be perfect. It doesn't, that's the other thing I always tell myself, that even, I had the advantage when I was a high school teacher because, of course, I knew more than them, they were. But, like, I kind of keep telling myself that they ask me, I've been asked to present, I must have some knowledge, but I don't have to be perfect. I just have to, bring what I know to the table, be as prepared as I can be, and just do it, and it's hard that I presented at an ACRL conference. It was 8 in the morning, and I expected maybe 20 people, and there were like 200 there.
And that's when I first met Leslie.
Yeah.
And I was in the audience, and I was enamored.
I was like, and I saw that people kept coming in, and I'm like, just no.
It was
presentation. And I'm like, and then it just kept coming, and I'm like, just no. But I found some faces. I had chatted with some people. I chatted with my panelists, that I was sitting next to, and I just, hey, they asked me here. I don't have to do this perfectly. I just have to share what I know and do my best. And that kind of brought me down, enough notches that I got through without passing out on the stage, which, for a minute it felt touch and go. So with that, and that helped, but just kind of, so think of the things that and like pens, which is another.
Yeah,
thing.
I
bringing something with me.
I have broken off so many pens. Like I sit there and I go like this, and then always in some inopportune time I break the pen.
But that can help too, because it's like, okay, I don't have to be perfect. You don't have to, that it just sort of brings it all down.
And I would actually go further than that. That I've actually had people come to me and say the fact that I'm not perfect and sometimes I mess up and I in the age. You have to understand, this is about, I do design work on the side, so this is about design work, this is about presentations, this is about everything. Everything in our culture is so slick right now. Like, everyone's getting plastic surgery, everything, graphics are so slick. It's almost like imperfections, and when you're human, I'm going to say this so I don't say the H's, is actually incredibly exciting for your audience, not the other way around.
Exactly.
Does that seem right?
Yeah.
I actually had people come up to me at ACRL and said it was so refreshing that you said something and you said, no, that's not what I mean. Hold on, I mean blah, blah, blah. Because I wasn't like on TV. I wasn't like a talking head. I was a real person standing there in front of them. And that's what everyone's like dying for. So I would say, what's that lady's name? Jeanette Winterson, who's a writer. I'm going to say her name wrong. She says, scars make a body more interesting. That's life. People are looking for that kind of authenticity instead of all the slickness. People don't like slickness. They don't trust slickness. They don't.
No.
So Janet, what's yours? So we'll all keep working together. What's yours, Janet?
Well, I've been through many levels. Well, for one thing, I never did a presentation until I was about 54 years old because I didn't go to college until then. So my very first presentation that I had to do in speech class, I forgot to breathe. And so I'm talking really fast, and I'm thinking inside of my head, I've got to finish this sentence because I have to breathe because I'm about ready to pass out, so hurry up. So once I got into being able to breathe and talk at the same time, then I was really okay.
Yes.
But then it also depends upon who's in your audience. I don't know who the 3 judges were. But it's like I did a workshop, and it was a series of 4, and our workshop was the first one. So it was like this big draw, because it was like this new topic. And the director of the program that I thought I was going to go into was like one of the first people that showed up at the workshop. So I really got, the throat started seizing off, like, oh my God. And probably I fear about kind of blacking out.
It's because you're not breathing.
Because I can go into this, I did a piano recital and I don't remember any of it.
Right.
That kind of blacked out. And it's like I functioned,
Mm-hmm.
but it was like, I don't remember any of it. So I worry, and especially with the doctor of the program, showing up, I was scared to death I was going to black out and not know what I said. But I didn't. I held it together, and he was very critical.
The other thing I was just thinking about when you were talking is like, I think also when you get more comfortable being in front of crowds, you really should use the power of negative space. And what do I mean by that? I mean, like when someone asks you a question, you should say, and I've always come around a lot of artists, and they have egos as big as this room, actually bigger than this room. So they get asked a question and they say, I don't know, I have to think about that.
Oh, and that happened with the doctor.
But it's the control of the negative space. It's like controlling, and I feel like that I've actually gotten to a point, in my presentations where if I want a point to be very serious, I will, show somebody something and I'll just say blah, blah, blah. Because A gives you a chance to regroup.
Well, and that's what happened. He asked me this question, and I already knew the answer.
Mm-hmm.
But I had to make the decision in that negative space. I never thought about it being negative space. I took that time to decide if I answered truthfully, will he never let me into this program, or am I going to be honest with myself and be truthful about what I truly feel? Am I going to be honest about me? And so that was the decision I had to make in my negative space.
Exactly. That's the decision you make on a daily basis.
And so I went with, I have to be truthful, because if I'm going to go into this program, I'm going to be truthful, and so he needs to know it up front that I'm truthful, even though it doesn't agree with his point of view.
And I wish that I would have made more decisions like that in the past. But I do think that you have to remember that when someone asks you to come and do a presentation, like if you guys are going to do presentations at LSO, that people are coming there because they really want to hear what you guys have to say. And they really, like Leslie was saying, people really do want to like you. And the other thing you should always think about when you do presentations is, if you do a presentation and it's 20 minutes long, like I saw Leslie do a presentation on Information Commons, I came and saw her, she talked about Information Commons. That meant I didn't have to read 5 books about Information Commons. She was doing me a favor. So you should think about it as you're integrating all this information, you're reading all this stuff way before these people come. You're doing them a favor. Because you've already integrated all this stuff. So now we're going to give you our secret strategies. And then we'll go over, we wanted to get to what you guys think, and then we'll go over kind of tried and true stuff. You want me to do it, Leslie? You want me to start?
Yes, you can.
Okay. So what time do we got? People?
It's 6:30.
Okay.
You can,
We started a little late.
yeah, we started at 30.
So we'll just go through this, and you guys tell us if you want to jump in. So we already talked about preparing, and really know your audience as well as your topic. If you're talking to students, you're going to be different. You're going to talk to them differently than if you're talking to other librarians. Have an outline, which Leslie already talked about. Really think of yourself as an actress when you're up there. Think of yourself as like, project your voice out, grow your voice, and think, this helps me. It might terrify other people, but it helps me to think that when I'm in front of crowds, I have a persona. It's not like me laying on the couch watching Nip Tuck. So I am comforted by the superficiality of the persona. Okay.
And I will speak to exactly the opposite of that. For me, I've tried that, and it just freaks me out. So I've tried many on, and they'll be like, oh, this isn't working for me. So you figure out what works for you, really for me, it's, yeah, I suppose, and then if I start overanalyzing, then I'll panic again. But I suppose there is a persona involved in what I do, but to me, I can't call it that because then I get scared. So think of what works.
Which your comfort zone is.
Right, what is it that fits, because everybody, there's no perfect way to teach, is another thing. There's no perfect way to present, there's no perfect way to teach. So think of what works for you.
And then that will be the comfort level. That's when all your passion starts coming through. That's where your content starts coming through. And one of the things that Leslie and I talked about is that you should always like throw people off in your audience. Like you should ask them questions when they don't think you're going to ask them questions. And you should go into the audience if you can, or you should teach from the back of the room, or you should, yeah, we do that all the time, especially with millennials. We teach from the back of the room all the time, and just try to make it as interactive as possible because that will keep them engaged. That'll keep you engaged. Just keep moving forward in your content. The other thing we talked about is, really, and this is about being yourself and also the persona, is I think that when you're presenting to people, you should definitely dress the part. Now, other people might feel differently about that. I feel that if people are paying me, well, sometimes they're paying me, sometimes I'm doing it for free, that you should, and Leslie and I talked about this in the past when we talked about teaching, like when you teach in front of somebody, you really should try for it to be kind of a day that looks a little different than your everyday. Because God knows I can wear some pretty casual things to work.
It is the beauty of working in an academic
environment.
I love it for that reason. Actually, other reasons too, but the dress code is delightful.
It is totally delightful. And Leslie talked about being yourself, and I really encourage you. Like like Leslie said, she's not as comfortable with persona. I'm not comfortable with formality. I'm a big goofball. I'm a big weirdo. And if I don't act like a big weirdo and I pretend like I'm a normal person, then I would be really uncomfortable in front of people. So that's not really going to work out for me. And so, okay, here's the PowerPoint. We all know about PowerPoint, right? Do not put your outline that you wrote and your sticky notes on your PowerPoint and read it. If anything, don't put any words at all in your PowerPoint.
Or just leave the PowerPoint out. Although they're good, they actually have saved me more than once because they give you something to kind of hold on to. But how many of you love the PowerPoint presentations? I mean, some are good. People
I like them.
You
I
do
like
like
them, but I'm a visual person.
I am too. I
love
love
it.
it.
I like having
Do you like it when they use images or words?
Images. Mostly the images match with what they're saying.
Exactly.
I'm very visual and I need something
See,
to
that's
look at.
good too. So
And
that's
I
good.
like it when they move, like the points come in as they're talking about, I like to do that whole motion thing.
So we would encourage you to always use visuals that accompany your language, but don't put what you're saying up on the PowerPoint. There's no reason for people to listen
To be there, they give them the PowerPoint and send them home.
And doing
So-
PowerPoints, especially for people who have that fear factor that everybody's looking at,
Mhm.
it gives them something to look
distract
at, and they're not, then you don't feel like all the eyes are on you.
Yeah, actually, I've really never felt that people were looking at me at all when I'm doing presentations, because I always use visuals, and people would much rather look, especially when I was doing art stuff, they were looking at the art, So we said about walking into your audience if you can. That's sometimes frightening, but it's more frightening for them.
So see, and I think it's really fun. It makes me feel better, because again, you get down to the more, you're a person and there's these other people, and so it's a lot less that you have to be the authority kind of thing, which I like.
Yeah.
So,
And also, something that I know I just started to do is when you ask people questions, which we didn't do today, we did not bring you treats, I'm sorry, you actually brought us treats.
we're kind of doing that.
Is when you're doing something, if it has a certain kind of content to it, and it's a content that you want people to remember, you might want to think about getting some kind of giveaways or some kind of takeaways. I did a presentation at ACRL. It was called Will It Make My Teeth Whiter? And it was all about marketing in libraries. And we gave away little tubes of toothpaste when people answered the question.
That's what Abby used to do so they could take it home with them.
And people wrote me afterwards and said, I got one of your tubes of toothpaste. And we threw them into the audience.
And I've been thinking about you every morning.
That's good, that's great.
So these are our lists. Do you guys, from our conversation today, you guys want to put anything else on here? Integrate, integrate, integrate. Practice, practice, practice with friendly people. We should put that on there.
Yeah, and have fun. I think that's the thing. Like you, as you're presenting or as an audience member, it just makes the time go by so much faster. And I think if you're an audience member and you're reacting well, then I think that reflects well on the presenter and they get more. I think it's this great cycle. So I think just try to have fun. Because if you're just, like you're sitting there and like that's going to do something to the presenter, and same with the presenter doing that, So
Right.
just kind of keep the energy up if you can.
Yeah. And think of it as an energy exchange. I think it is an energy. I think everything is an energy exchange.
Exactly.
So that's all of us that's all for now. Do you guys want to ask us any questions before we stop being whatever we are right now and start What's that?
Can I tell you about a funny presentation? Natives are just naturally shy. And so this poor guy who's kind of like you, you can see the paper shaking and everything like this. And he gets up there and he puts it down on the podium and he looks at the audience and he looks down. And he looks back up again and he looks down and he looks up and goes, "Stop staring at me." Poor guy. It's amazing.
He said it out loud though.
That's right. I sure broke the ice.
You totally want to just write them in one race.
Yeah, you can go ahead and stand by, it's okay. It's okay.
What happened after that?
He read his little cards and, he had it on the little recipe cards, or index cards. He'd read it, put it behind, and he made it through.
Oh,